The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, and there was complete silence. As he addressed the court, the defense counsel, a smug veteran by the name of Richard Caldwell, sat back in his chair and smiled to himself. "Your Honor, given the lack of evidence and my client's impeccable reputation, I move for immediate dismissal." Across the room, defense attorney Alina Vasquez, who was poised, sharp-eyed, and underappreciated, did little more than tap her pen on her legal pad. Over the course of many months, she had been working on this case, which was a high-stakes corporate fraud trial that included influential executives. Additionally, Caldwell and his colleagues were treating her as if she were an annoyance at this point. Throughout the whole of the trial, the opposing counsel had spent the entire time playing down her arguments, talking over her, and even making sarcastic comments about her ambition. If she had the audacity to push back, an old-school conservative, the judge had hardly masked his anger with her. He was clearly frustrated with her. Alina, however, was not your typical attorney. Alina had expected their haughtiness all along. She'd spent the night reading over the case papers, inquiring farther than anybody had anticipated possible. After then, she discovered it. There is a hidden email chain, gathering that is kept under wraps, flagrant breach of the ethical standards of the legal profession. Not only had Caldwell and his client committed fraud, but they had also conspired with the court to prevent evidence from being discovered. And Alina was in possession of evidence. Immediately, as Caldwell had concluded his grandstanding, Alina stood up, her voice quiet but razor-sharp alike. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to introduce Exhibit 47. There was a halt in the room. The displays in the courtroom flashed up with only a few clicks, displaying emails, timestamps, and a recorded phone conversation between Caldwell and the judge who was presiding over the case, who were discussing how to handle the matter. The audience let out a gasp. A lack of color appeared on the judge's face. Suddenly, Caldwell sprang to his feet and sputtered, This is not admissible. It's a fabrication." Alina didn't even flinch. "The metadata is clear and accurate. The State Bar, the Department of Justice, and the New York Times have all received everything that I have previously reported." After just 1 week, Richard Caldwell was removed from the bar. In a state of embarrassment, the judge resigned, leaving his legacy in ruins. The executives of the corporation were targeted by federal indictments. Are you Alina?
Yes.
She was successful in more than one way. The legend that she became. Do not ever undervalue the lady who was sitting quietly in the courtroom, because she was destroying their whole careers. While they were busy making fun of her, she was constantly doing this. Almost immediately, the media went into a frenzy. When Alina Vasquez emerged from the courtroom, her phone was already ringing with calls from a variety of sources, including CNN, The Wall Street Journal, and even a producer from 60 Minutes. The narrative was no longer simply about a corporate fraud case. Rather, it was about a systemic rot in the judicial system, and she had just brought it to light. It took less than 48 hours for more attorneys and former clerks to come out with their own accounts. One of the younger associates working for Caldwell's company disclosed that the manipulation of evidence was a common practice in high-stakes cases. During a live television broadcast, a retired judge said that backdoor transactions such as this one have been an open secret for many years. Investigators from the federal government have begun an extensive investigation into judicial misconduct in 3 different jurisdictions. On social media, the name Alina became popular, and hashtags such as Another First Road and Thieveski's Effect were used to describe her. There were memes that appeared online that depicted her displeased gaze in the courtroom, with the phrase, "You thought you could outlier her. It's adorable." On the other hand, strong men do not fall softly. To begin, there were calls from unknown individuals who said, "You ought to have accepted the settlement, girl." After that, a campaign of smears was launched, which included op-eds that called her ethics into question, bogus reviews on the website of her legal business, and even a video of her purportedly coaching a witness that was released and highly altered. Alina did not show any signs of flinching. During the news conference, she was accompanied by her legal team as well as 2 federal marshals, just in case anything went wrong. "If you are attempting to intimidate me," she remarked in a firm voice, "you are wasting your time. I am not a frightening person. In addition, I do not compromise in any way." Another bombshell was then delivered by her. A civil RICO complaint was brought by Alina against Caldwell's old company, in which she accused the company of engaging in organized corruption. There was a panic among the defendants, and some of them flipped and offered their evidence in return for immunity. Those that engaged even more shady attorneys just served to make the situation even more dire. The dominoes fell one by one as follows. A total of 3 federal judges were compelled to retire earlier than expected. Millionaire CEO who believed he was an untouchable figure was sentenced to 15 years in jail. Because of Elena's case, the state bar decided to revamp its disciplinary procedure. They referred to it as a wake-up call. Elena received a call from an unexpected ally, the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court, who offered her a position on a new judicial ethics task group. This event occurred just when it seemed that everything had come to an end. She came close to laughing. "You want me to clean up the system?" No. This was the Chief Justice's response. "I want you to burn it down and rebuild it." A lawsuit was not the only one that Elena Vasquez won. A movement was initiated by her. In the course of their education, law schools incorporated her techniques. According to female lawyers, she was the reason they stopped allowing condescension to be tolerated in the courtroom. And every time a conceited attorney attempted to intimidate the quiet woman who was sitting at the defense table, they recalled the events that had transpired with Richard Caldwell. In addition to that, they were completely silent. In the 6 months that followed the controversy, Elena Vasquez had evolved into something more than a lawyer. She had become a symbol. The name of this woman was whispered in awe throughout the halls of the courtroom. Her face was featured on the covers of Time and Forbes. However, symbols breed adversaries. And hers were planning to launch a counterattack. Emails that were encrypted were the first step. You are completely unaware of what you have let free. Leave while you still have the opportunity. It was erased by Elena. She was in a worse state as a result of intoxicated fraternity males in law school. Following that, the actual message came. There was no return address on the item that was brought to her workplace by a courier. A burner phone, a single key, and a photograph of her younger sister Isabel leaving her apartment were all things that were found inside. Quickly, the phone began to ring. An unintelligible voice whispered. The Caldwell case was nothing more than the apparent surface. As you go deeper, you will discover the individuals that are really in charge of this metropolis. It would be a terrible thing for Isabel to get. Entangled in this, it seemed as if Elena's blood had frozen. She sought assistance from the people she relied on the most, including a hacker by the name of Marcus Ghost Ruiz, who had assisted her in breaking the email trail in the Caldwell investigation. Detective Naomi Price is a no-nonsense detective who has a resentment against corrupt law enforcement officers. He was a discredited journalist named Daniel Shaw, who had been pursuing this topic for a number of years. As a group, they were successful in uncovering a shadow network, which was a covert partnership consisting of judges, legislators, and business leaders who had been influencing rulings for decades. The group referred to itself as the Gavel. On top of that, Elena had just placed a bullseye on her abdomen. Marcus broke into a private server at 3 in the morning and discovered something that was far more devastating than they had anticipated. Adjusted verdicts, which may include false convictions, are included in this list. Payments that were processed via accounts located overseas. There is also a file that is titled Vasquez Contingency. It was opened by Elena. The order to kill was given. No, Elena did not flee. She adapted to the situation. She disclosed the information to all of the major news organizations, but with a twist. Marcus was kind enough to provide a tracking application that was embedded into the data. It would be possible for anybody who accessed it to direct her directly to the inner circle of the Gavel. After sending Isabel into hiding with Detective Price, she then publicly put up the challenge to the Gavel to come after her. She told a reporter, "I'm not hard to find," and she meant it. "But I promise I'm much harder to kill." The bait was taken by them. After midnight, she was being pursued by a dark SUV. A government safe house was the destination that Elena drove directly to, where armed operatives were waiting for her. Does the SUV include any males? At least 2 state senators and a judge who has retired. The video of the arrest quickly went viral. The members of the Gavel were eliminated one by one. Their riches were taken off their shoulders, and their reputations were erased. Even if Elena's sister was secure, the danger continued to exist. This kind of power did not disappear. Rather, it moved underground. Are you Elena? She established the Vasquez Initiative, a charitable organization whose mission is to eradicate corruption in the judicial system. On the other hand, When she stood at the window of her office and watched the lights of the city flicker, she realized this was not in the end.